Hello, everybody, and welcome to American Entrepreneur. My name is Chris Pastrana, and today we are here with Daniel Reardon, the owner and founder of Plexkey Promotional Marketing Group. How's it going?
Pretty good, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's jump into this. Tell us about yourself and a little bit about your business.
Sure thing. My name is Daniel Reardon. I 35 years old. I started Plexkey Promotional Marketing Group about 2 years ago. I live in Millis, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston, Mass. I started this after working in the industry for a few years and having a lot of account management responsibility. Yeah.
Cool. So you said you already worked in kind of the promotional industry beforehand?
Yes, I worked for two different companies over the course of 4 or 5 years. And the first one, I kind of just really got my feet wet in the office environment. I'd mostly done retail prior to that. And I was overseeing a bunch of orders for promotional products um, from the promotional products owner side. I was following up on orders for companies like mine, and I did that for about 2 years. And then I moved to another company where I was actually placing orders as a distributor.
That's pretty interesting. So where did the leap come from when you decided to, you're working for a company, you're kind of getting experience, you're growing, and you're like, I want to start my own thing?
So, I mean, I've always wanted to have my own company. Even back when like eBay had just started. I mean, I was like 13 years old and I was reading books on how to start an eBay business because I just had that urge to do that. When I decided to do this, there were a lot of factors involved. Some personal, some professional. I was making great money. I loved what I did. I loved the people that I worked with, but I saw the opportunity. Um, well, let me put it this way. I had a need for a different schedule. This was prior to COVID-19, but I wanted to be able to work from home because everything I did was just from a computer and a phone. So there was no reason for me to be commuting, an hour and a half every day, sending my son to daycare every day when I could be doing this from my house. And that wasn't the company's policy. And understandably, whatever, that's up to them. But I had a lot of things going on that really necessitated me being able to work from anywhere. So that was really the deciding factor, honestly, is it wasn't so much that, I suddenly had an audience of people asking me to buy promotional products. It was that I knew this industry. I had a need and an understanding of what I would have to do. And I figured then was as good a time as any.
Definitely. Now, I know because I have 4 children myself, working and running your own business and having a child is hugely stressful on you and your time and your business. So how is that for you?
It's been very challenging. When I left a pretty decent salary to start this. And so as soon as I left my job and launched this, I also took on the challenge of having to compensate for that income right off the bat. And my company, out of the gate didn't, give me that income. So this time last year, I was working 3 other jobs, literally. I was, and I'm a co-parent, I should say. I'm not an entirely single father. My son's mother and I, work together to raise our son, but live separately. And so I have a schedule with him and her. And I was crunching, running this business, working an overnight shift, working at a bar, and doing remote work for another company into 3 or 4 days um, to ensure that the 4 days a week my son's with me, I was available and engaged and only working remotely and not having to send him to daycare or commute 3 hours. So it was very challenging for me, and still is to this day. And 2020, produced a whole other set of problems for me. But I've been doing it. But it's certainly one of the most challenging things I've ever done as a whole.
Yeah. So that's interesting because you said, you've been running your business for about 2 years now. 2020 was not fun for anybody. So
Yeah.
how was adjusting to being a brand new business owner? You said you're a co-parent, single dad, rolling right into a pandemic.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm thankful. When I start, it was November, the last week of October 2018, when I started Plexkey officially. So that was a year before the pandemic. So 2019 was my first full year running this business. Throughout 2019, like I just mentioned, I was working anywhere from 2 to 3 additional jobs on top of running this company and all my life responsibilities. So I was laying the groundwork, and I have a knack for promotional products, and I have a strong retail and management and business development background. But honestly, I didn't have any experience running a business when I started this. So I'm navigating that. And then 2020 happened in January, pretty much is when I left. I was down to one part-time job in January of 2020 out of the 4 I had prior. And at the end of January 2020, I left the bar that I was working at and just set out to focus on Plexkey 100%, going into what was going to be trade show season. Historically, April, May, June is one of the busiest times of year for this industry. So at the end of January, I was like, I'm doing this, like I'm going to stock up on some trade show displays, and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to start really scaling my business. And when the pandemic hit and I didn't have any other job to rely on, I found myself in a very difficult position. So, that was a challenge. I now it's January of 2021, and I've only been working on Plexkey this entire year, and I've somehow survived. So
Good. So we've been talking a lot about some of the bad things and stuff like that, but let's talk about what's been going well for you. I mean, as far as 2020 is over, thankfully, and we're moving forward, we're doing good things. What's the bright side of everything you've got?
I have, even though the numbers themselves are small, Plexkey tripled this year in gross sales over 2019. So that's been great. But I think the biggest thing, as far as business anyway goes, this year, the level of appreciation that I think people have for small business owners, it has more than tripled. I think everybody has seen what the pandemic has done to families and small business owners, and big business owners too. I'm not excluding them, but especially small business owners. So it seems to me anyway that the reason I can attribute my growth in Plexkey this year is due to the pandemic, in the sense that I think people have found me and perhaps given me a chance they may not have given me last year, because I think the pandemic has kind of shaped how much we appreciate small business. That's just my opinion. I don't have any data to back that up, but I've made a lot of really valuable connections this year over that topic, that, recognition of each other and the effort and really supporting other small business any way I can, and vice versa. So I would say that's a real positive take for me anyway on 2020. But that doesn't come easy to say, that, as much as we may all appreciate each other, people are, really struggling right now. And so I think it's driven creativity and a sense of community to some extent.
Yeah, and one of the big reasons for this podcast is I've been wanting to show kind of the behind the scenes of being an entrepreneur and how it's not all this romantic view that is kind of being put out right now. So
Yeah.
I love the realness of it, and the struggle and all that, because it's very difficult. It's just that the pandemic's hitting, people losing their businesses left and right. I don't know, hundreds of thousands of businesses have closed across the country and world or whatever, and like people are trying to pick up and move forward, and I think that is a better take on entrepreneurship than generally what you see from the big gurus.
Yeah, certainly. It's, and again, I'm not knocking, we could have a whole separate conversation about big corporations, right? But, and at the end of the day, us small business owners, AKA consumers, really drive those big companies. So, I can't really say anything about it because we all knowingly rely on them. And my hope is, that you kind of mentioned just a moment ago that there's this kind of grandiose perception of being a business owner or a small business owner, an entrepreneur, whatnot. But honestly, it is very challenging. And I didn't take out any huge business loan. I didn't have any investors. Like, I started this company with $200 and an idea, and I've been profitable because I understood the process. That's the easy part, honestly. The hard part is maintaining, and the days that you don't get sales and all the no's that you have to go through to get a yes, and really just a level of self-doubt. It's like I gave up a really good, stable salary to do this, and I've been struggling and making less money than I've made in 20 years since I started this. Like, there's no fun in that. And I had to give up a lot, and I'm trying to play the long game, that when I was making that salary, I was miserable because I was away from home 50 or 60 hours a week, and most of my paycheck was going to childcare or commuting or business, like attire, really. And it just didn't make sense to me that what I was giving up to what I was at best ever going to get from working for anybody, so I'm not exactly where I want to be right now with my company, but that to me is the only real glory of running a small business, is that that's the risk you take, and that you're aspiring to be something more, and it shouldn't just be the money. It should really be what it represents, because if it was just money, one of the worst jobs I've ever had prior to starting this business is where I made the most money, and I was very not comfortable in that position, but I was making more money than I'd ever made. So all of those things kind of added up for me, and I just think that it's more important to do what you love, and for me, that's spending. I'd rather spend time with my family and make less money than spend 50 hours or 60 hours away from home every week, and what is it all for if you're not, kind of sharing it, right? So.
Absolutely. And you actually touched on something I was about to ask you about, because, I think the book from Simon Sinek is, start with why. So I always like to talk about, like, what's the why that really pushes you down that road? Because I said a lot of people give up. A lot of people romanticize what entrepreneurship is, but the ones who keep fighting, keep struggling, typically have a reason.
Yeah. I mean, every single day, I think about, okay, should I go get another part-time job right now to kind of supplement what I'm not making right now? Because I'm not rolling in the dough. I'm really not, but I'm doing it, and I've made some serious connections, and I've made some really high quality deals with people that have helped other businesses. And so my why for me personally is I can do this from anywhere in the world. As long, even if the internet goes down, I could mail in invoices and purchase orders to factories if I needed to, like wherever my son is, wherever my family is, I can be there and run this business. So I have yet to find any job offer out there that can offer me that, and now with with the pandemic, it's interesting because now there's all these remote jobs, right? But you surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, there's still not a lot of flexibility there, because now you're just kind of under more scrutiny to be tied to your desk at home. And at the end of the day, I highly doubt there's many CEOs out there laying awake at night worrying about Dan's future and Dan's son's future, right? Or your future. What boss have you worked for? Even if they're a good boss, are they as stressed about your future as you are? And I don't think they are. So I want to make my own, create my own destiny here. That it's worth the risk to me to get everything else I want out of running this business, even if it takes me years to catch up on the salary that I may be missing out on because I left my full-time job. If that makes sense. So.
No, absolutely. And like you said, it might take years, but eventually you'll get there, and then the quality of life will just be so much better, which would be better for you, better for your family, everything. So let's jump in one. I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask. So you've only been in business for a couple of years now, but even then you've racked up a ton of experience. So from now to when you first started, what would you do differently from if you started today, just knowing what you know?
Yeah. A few things, to be honest with you. I certainly would have spent more time on creating. I knew what my processes and systems were going to be initially, but I hadn't worked out my own system for measurement. So I would have spent more time focusing on a way to measure my progress better. And I don't mean just like numbers, but I mean real, we could get down to the details of how many emails got opened from my last email campaign, but a lot of those things just, I'm very process oriented, and as much work as I did on it, I feel like I could have done more. And so that's a big one that I think about every day. I'm just like, man, like I should have approached this from a different way. And another thing I probably would have done differently would have been to perhaps look for a starting funding, only to the extent that I feel like my biggest challenge is reach, honestly, is that I have a good product, I have a good service. When people do find me, I have a very high success rate. It's just getting in front of people. And if I had more funding early on, I feel like, I certainly know I would have created a much bigger opening splash. So, I feel like I didn't really do an official launch. It was just one day Plexkey existed, and I didn't really do a launch. And I wish I had really spent some time developing all that stuff up front and then announcing it and really rolling into this instead of just jumping into it. I think that may have had set me on a different course initially, but nevertheless, I've done other things similar to that since then that have certainly had a similar effect. So those are two big ones. Yeah.
Okay. So taking that just kind of one degree off, if someone came up to you and they were looking to start their own business, they're a fledgling entrepreneur, what advice would you give them starting out?
I would say, just really do your homework and make sure that you're going into whatever it is you're going into with the most open mind you've ever had. and know that you won't be able to do it alone. Even if you don't hire anybody I don't have any employees really. Even if you don't hire somebody, you're gonna rely on so many other people suddenly that, your head will spin once you realize how many people are actually involved in running a business on some level or another. Um, you have to learn from others, and you have to kind of put your pride aside and put yourself, you know, on the other side of the counter as your consumer, as your customer, your whoever that may be, and be willing to, just learn as much as you can. So if you have no business experience, you didn't go to college to run a business or financial experience, you either need to learn how to do that stuff or you need to hire somebody to do it. And so if you're not prepared to hire somebody, then you're in for a long road of figuring all that stuff out, and maintaining it. So there's this weird gray area, which I've been transitioning little by little from starting a company and having to work 3 part-time jobs to having a company and only having to work 1 part-time job to having a company and just getting by on the income I'm making from it. My next phase is in this gray area is going to be getting so many orders that I almost have enough money to hire somebody, but I have to get to and exceed that amount of revenue before I can confidently hire somebody. So that those phases are something that when you build a real process, when you're about to endeavor in starting a company, you have to account for that, okay, how am I going to make, say, $200,000 in profit this year, enough to pay myself and pay an employee or two? And how am I going to keep up with all of that work until I can hire somebody else? It's like when you're first starting out, there's a lot of work to do as far as setting up. And then once orders start coming in, okay, now I've got a job to do every day because I'm following up and actually working with clients. But while I'm running this by myself, I'm also the accountant. I'm also the vendor relations guy. I'm also the customer service guy. I'm also the web developer, unless I want to hire people to do all that stuff. So depending on how you go into this business is really going to dictate, what challenges you're facing. And so if you're not prepared financially, then you've automatically signed up to take it all on by yourself. And if you are prepared financially to hire people right off the bat, then you also have to be prepared to lead those people or hire somebody to do it, and define your role as the business owner. And so that's something that I think about constantly. What's my ultimate role going to be here once I've scaled enough to hire a few people and get the system kind of running on its own? What am I going to end up doing? So those are all things that you really got to consider.
That's awesome. Now, it's funny, just as we talk, it kind of rolls right into my next question. So final question, then I'll let you go. What is your ultimate dream and vision of your company? What do you want it to become?
Yeah. What I'd really like it to become is a household name for helping small businesses reach their prospects and clients and employees effectively and efficiently. I want people to come to my company because they know that I can get the most, stretch their dollar as far as advertising their business. And as far as, what the company itself will look like, I would always want to be involved. I'm a very hands-on person, and I really, my whole career, no matter what job I've had, has always involved interacting with people directly, either face to face or over the phone. And that's where I really do my best work. I love learning about companies and people. Even when I was doing retail, it's not just sales. It's really getting to know the customer And so I don't know if I'll always be a salesperson in my company, but I'd like to have a team of people generating leads, but I still want to be involved in the day to day and making sure that my company values are aligned with what we're doing. So become a big company without being a big company, a lot of people, would argue that if all of my clients are small businesses, then I'm looking at, typically smaller orders, and that right off the bat sets off a red flag for me. Is that exactly like that's what's wrong with big corporate, is that once these companies get so big, they forget about the little guys and like where they came from. And it's like how are these small businesses supposed to grow into big companies if they're not getting the same attention and customer service, as a big company? Like, they need the resources, they need the access, they need the support. And although the dollar is what's going to keep the company open, that can't be the only value that you bring. You can't say, okay, I just sell cheap stuff, because that's not necessarily going to help anybody. You really need to, for me, I need to be a partner to my clients, so they feel confident in working with me, because that's where we're going to be our most creative and our most successful. And so I really want my company to be known for the deep relationships we have with our customers.
Okay, I love it. So thank you so much for being here today, Dan.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you. Sorry for blabbing and ranting on like that.
No, you're perfectly fine. Thank you for all the input, and I like it when I don't have to do as much talking.
Not a problem.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for listening. Definitely, where can people find you and Plexkey Marketing?
So you can go to www.plexkey.com. That's our website. We have everything you could imagine as far as printed promotional products. We do everything from printed paper goods like business cards, brochures, menus, to custom apparel, to awards, and so much more. And then we have social media platforms across the grid: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, a couple others. So yeah, you can find us pretty much anywhere.
All right, perfect. So I will put all those in the show notes so everyone can reach out to you if they need your help. And again, thank you for joining me. And everyone else, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.